He thought he had covered every trace, burned the evidence, buried the weapon, even lied to the one person who trusted him most. But what happens when your biggest secret is sitting across the dinner table? A killer's world unravels, not in the courtroom, not in the streets, but in his own home. When his mother turns him in, you won't believe what she found and what he finally confessed. Killer thinks he'll get away until Mom turns him in. Rain tapped against the window pane like fingers drumming a warning. The air inside the house felt thick, almost wet with secrets. Mark sat at the edge of the couch, unmoving. His hands, once trembling, now rested steady on his knees. He had cleaned the blood, scrubbed the floor, burned the gloves, buried the knife beneath the old oak tree. No one saw him. No one could prove anything. He stared at the TV, though it was off. Reflected in the black screen, he saw his own face. Pale. Eyes sunken. A flicker of something, guilt, maybe, crossed his expression. Behind him, the hallway was quiet. Too quiet. Then, footsteps. Soft. Deliberate. They stopped at the doorway. His mother stood there, still wearing her church clothes, still holding her purse, clutched tight in both hands. She looked at him, eyes sharp and glistening. "Where were you last night?" she asked. Mark smiled, but it felt forced. "Out. With friends." Her silence was louder than a scream. She stepped forward. He could smell her perfume, lavender and powder, laced with tension. "There was blood on the back steps," she said. Mark's mouth opened, then closed again. His throat felt like it was wrapped in wire. She set the purse down, opened it slowly, pulled out something wrapped in plastic. A phone. His phone. The screen was cracked, streaked with dried mud. "I found it under the oak tree." Mark's heart pounded in his chest like a war drum. He stood. Too fast. The room spun. His mother's hand tightened on the phone. "You told me it was stolen." He said nothing. She took a step back. Then another. Her voice trembled, but her words were steady. "I saw the news, Mark." He shook his head. But she kept going. "That girl. In the woods." Mark swallowed hard. His tongue felt like sandpaper. "She was just 17, his mother whispered. "She was somebody's daughter." A gust of wind howled outside, rattling the windows. Mark turned his back to her, closed his eyes. He could still see the woods, still feel the weight of the knife in his hand, still hear her scream. His mother's voice came again, quieter this time. "I raised you better than this." He felt the warmth drain from his face. "She begged you, Mark." He spun around. His mother was holding the house phone now, thumb hovering over the buttons. He took a step forward. She raised it like a shield. "I already called." Mark froze. His breath caught in his throat. The sound of distant sirens bled through the quiet like a knife, through fabric. Blue and red lights flashed on the walls. He turned to the window. The street outside was filling with cars. Boots hit the pavement. Doors slammed. His mother stood firm. Tears ran down her cheeks, but her voice did not break. "You need to pay for what you did." Mark's knees buckled, and he sank to the floor. The weight of the room pressed down on him. His chest rose and fell in sharp, uneven bursts. Outside, the voices grew louder. Commands barked. Radios crackling. The front door shook beneath a heavy fist. 3 hard knocks. Then silence. Mark looked up at his mother. Her hands trembled now, but she did not move. Not toward him. Not toward the door. Just stood there, still as stone. He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came. Only a dry, broken breath. The knock came again. Louder. Urgent. His mother stepped aside, clearing a path. Without looking at him. Without saying a word. Mark dragged himself to his feet. Each step toward the door felt like wading through cement. The hallway stretched endlessly in front of him. Framed photos lined the walls. Family vacations. Graduation day. Smiling faces that now felt like ghosts. He reached for the doorknob. The brass was cold, like the touch of the grave. One more breath. He opened it. A wall of uniforms greeted him. Guns drawn. faces unreadable. He raised his hands, the palms slick with sweat. Behind him, his mother leaned against the wall, her eyes closed, her lips moving in a silent prayer. One officer stepped forward. "Mark Dalton." He nodded. His voice was barely a whisper. "Yes." Cold metal snapped around his wrists. He flinched at the sound. The world blurred at the edges. The officer's grip was firm as he was led down the steps. Rain hit his face. Sharp, unforgiving. Neighbors peeked through curtains. Cars idled at the curb. He looked back one last time. His mother still stood in the doorway, her hand covering her mouth, eyes glassy, not with regret, but something colder, resolve. The cruiser door opened. He ducked inside. Leather seats stuck to his damp clothes. As the door shut, the world outside vanished. The engine roared to life. Mark pressed his forehead to the window. The house faded behind him, but her face did not. Her eyes burned into him, not with hate, not even with sorrow, but with something worse, disappointment. The cruiser turned the corner, swallowing the house in the rear-view mirror. Mark sat in silence, the hum of the engine vibrating through his bones. Rain streaked the window beside him, carving crooked lines down the glass. His reflection stared back, distorted, ghost-like. He could still hear her voice. "You need to pay for what you did." It rang louder than the sirens, sharper than the cuffs biting into his wrists. The officer in the front seat said nothing, only flicked his eyes to the mirror now, and then. Mark shifted. The leather creaked under his weight. The smell of wet wool and old coffee filled the car. He leaned back, closed his eyes, but the darkness behind them offered no escape. He saw her again, the girl in the woods, matted hair, mud on her shoes, eyes wide with pleading. She had begged.
He remembered that now.
Every word like a thorn in his chest. He opened his eyes. The station was getting closer. Its tower lights blinked through the rain. A hollow weight settled in his gut. Not fear, not guilt, something emptier, like the final click of a lock on a door that would never open again. He was not thinking about what would come next. Not the trial, not the cell, not the silence that would follow. He was thinking about her, and about his mother, standing in the doorway, refusing to look away, choosing justice over blood. He had thought he could erase it all.
Clean it.
Hide it. Forget it. But blood stains more than floors. It stains hands, memories, and mothers' hearts. The cruiser slowed, pulled into the lot. Headlights swept over the wet concrete. The doors opened. The rain came in sideways, cold as truth. Mark stepped out, feet unsteady. Officers waited by the entrance. One of them reached for his arm, guided him toward the door. Each step was louder than the last, like the sound of a gavel falling. Behind him, the cruiser's lights blinked once, then dimmed. The door opened ahead. Warm yellow light spilled out, but it did not feel warm. Not to him. It felt like a furnace, waiting to burn everything down. The threshold loomed in front of him, paint peeling, doorframe warped from years of storms and confessions. Mark hesitated, only for a second, long enough to feel the weight of the air shift behind him, long enough to realize there was no turning back. The officer's hand on his arm tightened slightly, not unkind, just firm, necessary. They stepped inside. Fluorescent lights buzzed above, too bright, too sterile. They bleached the color out of everything, even his thoughts. A woman at the front desk glanced up. Her expression did not change. She had seen faces like his before. Too many times. Processing, she asked, reaching for a clipboard. The officer nodded. Suspect in the Carlton Woods case.
She paused.
Her eyes flicked up to Mark, then back to the form. She did not speak again. She did not need to. Mark's shoes squeaked on the linoleum. A hallway stretched ahead.
Long.
Too long. The walls closed in with every step. Posters of rights, warnings, emergency procedures. He tried to read them, to distract himself. But the words ran together. Letters turned into shapes. Shapes into noise. They stopped at a steel door. It hissed open. Inside, an empty room. Table. 2 chairs. A camera in the corner, blinking red. Sit. He obeyed. The chair groaned beneath him. The door clicked shut. And then, silence.
Thick.
Total. He was alone. His reflection stared back at him in the black glass of the camera lens. Waiting. Judging. He leaned forward, elbows on the table, head in his hands. He wanted to scream,
To cry.
to run. But he sat still, frozen. Time passed in slow drips, like water leaking from a pipe deep in the walls.
Then,
The door opened. A man walked in, suit too tight at the shoulders, badge gleaming on his belt. He sat across from Mark, pulled out a folder, opened it. The rustle of paper sounded louder than thunder. Mark Dalton, he said, flat, unimpressed. Mark lifted his eyes. He nodded. The man tapped a photo onto the table. A girl.
smiling. Alive.
Not like how Mark last saw her. This is Mia Reynolds. Mark blinked. Hard. Her name carved something sharp into his chest. The detective watched him closely. You were seen with her the night she died. Mark said nothing. The detective leaned in.
Low voice.
Careful. Your mother told us everything. Mark flinched. The room seemed to tilt. His stomach turned to stone. She gave us the knife. Mark's breath caught. She gave us the clothes. His heartbeat thundered in his ears. And she gave us you. Mark's hands trembled. He did not try to stop them. The detective's voice dropped to a whisper. She said you came home shaking. She said you cried. She said you told her you tried to stop. Mark looked down. At the photo. At Mia's eyes. He remembered those eyes. How they looked just before they closed. Forever. And for the first time since that night, he let himself remember everything. The sound came first. A scream. Not loud. Not wild.
But soft.
Strangled. Barely a breath. It echoed in his mind, dragging him back. The forest was quiet that night. Too quiet. Leaves stirred underfoot, whispering secrets to the dark. Mia had been ahead of him, just a few steps. She laughed. It was nervous, unsure. Where are we going, Mark? He had no answer. The lie had already carried them too far. Moonlight filtered through the branches like silver blades. He had told her he needed to talk. Somewhere private. Somewhere no one would hear. He had meant to scare her. That was all. Just a little push. But something broke. Inside him. Or maybe it had always been broken. Mia turned. Her smile faltered. She saw something in his eyes. Something she could not name. She backed away. He reached for her.
Not gently.
Not anymore. She screamed once. It was small.
Quick.
Cut short. And then, the knife. It came out of his pocket as if it had a mind of its own. He did not remember opening it. Just the cold weight of it in his hand. The way the moon caught the blade. How it flashed like lightning. And then her blood. Hot. Real. Too real. It soaked his hands. His shirt. The ground. The forest swallowed the sound. The trees stood silent. Witnesses who would never speak. He dropped the knife. But it was too late. It was already done. Mia was still. Eyes open. Mouth parted. Rain began to fall.
Thin. Silent.
As if the sky itself disapproved. He ran. No plan. Just panic. Branches tore at his arms. Mud clung to his shoes. His breath burned like fire in his throat. When he got home, his mother was in the kitchen, stirring soup. She turned, smiled. It vanished when she saw his face. Mark. He had said her name. Just her name. Like it was the only thing left in the world. And then he collapsed. She caught him before he hit the floor. And he told her. Everything. Right there on the cold tile. He told her what he had done. What he could not undo.
And now.
He was here. Staring at Mia's photo on the table. His wrists still cuffed. His voice barely a whisper. I did not mean to kill her. The detective did not move. Did not blink. But you did, he said. Mark nodded. Slow. Heavy. He looked up at the camera. I will tell you everything. The detective did not speak. He only nodded, a small, deliberate motion. Then he leaned back in his chair, folding his arms. The camera's red light blinked once.
Twice.
Recording. Mark shifted in his seat. The cuffs bit into his wrists again. He barely noticed. His voice came low, flat,
Drained.
We were walking, near the trail. I told her I was scared, that someone was following us. She believed me. He stared at the wall now, eyes unfocused. She always believed me. The detective said nothing, just listened. Mark's breath caught for a second before he pushed on. I thought maybe if I scared her enough, she would stay. She was pulling away from me. She was talking to someone else. He dragged a hand down his face, fingers trembling. I wanted to make her stop. Just stop for a second. Just see me. His voice cracked. She screamed. I tried to cover her mouth. I pushed her down. The room felt smaller with every word, like the walls were closing in. I did not mean to stab her. It just happened. I looked down, and there was blood. He clenched his fists. She kept looking at me. She was not crying. She just looked.
He stopped.
The detective waited. Mark blinked hard, then continued. She looked like she knew. Knew it was me all along. He wiped his nose on his sleeve. I buried the knife. Behind the oak. The one at the edge of the yard. I burned my clothes in the pit. Then I scrubbed my hands until they bled. He looked at the detective. Eyes hollow. I thought I could sleep, but she's still there. Every time I close my eyes, she's still there. The detective slid the folder aside, reached into his coat pocket, pulled out something wrapped in evidence plastic. Mark's breath hitched. It was her necklace.
Gold chain.
A small heart pendant, still streaked with dirt. We found this in your room, the detective said. Mark stared at it like it might burn through the table. I kept it, he whispered. His voice was barely air. I do not know why. The door opened behind him. Another officer entered. Younger. Serious. He nodded to the detective. It is time. Mark did not resist. He stood slowly. The cuffs stayed tight. The young officer took his arm, guided him out of the room. As the door swung closed behind them, Mark turned his head slightly, just enough to catch one last glimpse of the photo on the table.
Mia.
Still smiling. Still alive. The hallway outside the interrogation room was quiet. Too quiet. Mark's footsteps echoed down the polished floor, each one sounding heavier than the last. The officer walked beside him, saying nothing. There was nothing left to say. Ahead, the intake door waited. Steel. Unforgiving. Mark paused as it opened. A gust of cooler air hit his face. Not cold like the rain. This was colder. Institutional. Final. He stepped inside. They took his fingerprints, his belt, his shoelaces. They handed him a uniform.
Gray.
Shapeless. He changed in silence. The walls around him buzzed with fluorescent light and the distant murmur of other inmates behind thick doors. He was led to a small cell. It smelled of bleach and years. The door clanged shut behind him. That sound. It did not echo. It sank.
Deep.
He sat on the edge of the metal bed, hands in his lap. For the first time since that night, there was nothing to run from. No lies to arrange. No evidence to destroy. Only truth.
And time.
He looked up at the narrow window. A sliver of sky peeked through the bars. Clouds rolled overhead, heavy and slow. He thought of Mia, of her laugh, of how she never got to say goodbye. Then he thought of his mother, the way she looked at him that morning, eyes full of tears.
And strength.
She had chosen what he could not. She had saved someone, even if it meant losing her son. Mark leaned back against the wall, closed his eyes. He would carry this. Not just the sentence, not just the years, but the knowing, the remembering, the silence that only truth could fill. Outside, the rain began to fall again.
Soft. Steady.
Washing the world clean. But not him. Never him.